It's 5:47 in the morning. Four men are asleep below deck. The storm passed, the anchor is set, everything is calm. One of them wakes up and hears something. Not wind, not waves, something underneath those things. A deep bass rumble like a freight train in the dark, getting closer, getting louder. A 60-foot rock wave broadsided the yacht, picked it up, and flipped it completely upside down. The floor became the ceiling. Freezing water surged through the dark, and four men who barely knew each other began what would become 118 inside a coffin at sea. Miraculously, all four men survived the impact. What saved them was physics. When the trimaran flipped, a sealed air pocket formed inside the hull. The boat was essentially an upside-down cup. It kept them breathing, but the water was 12 degrees Celsius. Hypothermia in hours without getting above the waterline. Blind and shaking, they felt their way to the aft cabin and built a platform from anything floating. A mattress, drawer panels, foam cushions. Four grown men, 4.5 feet wide. That's it. If one person turned over in the night, everyone had to roll at the same time. They would live on the mattress for the next 4 months. The captain was John Glennie, 48, tough, experienced, and the man who'd built the Rose Noel with his own hands. It was his boat, his dreams, and his responsibility. Phil Hoffman, 41, 4 kids at home, a wife who adored him, and a triple bypass surgery behind him. He had no business being on this boat. He got on it anyway, because that was Phil. Then there were Rick and Jim, 2 strangers who'd answered a handwritten ad on a hostel notice board about 2 weeks before departure. 2 of them strangers, 1 tiny mattress, months of dark. What could go wrong? John activated the emergency beacon immediately. He told the group help is coming, so he believed it. What he didn't know was where the wave had pushed them, deep into what sailors call the marine desert. No shipping lanes, no fishing boats, no air coverage. One of the most empty patches of ocean on Earth, the beacon screamed into the void for 8 days. Then the battery died. No warning light. The men had no idea. For weeks after that, they were still rationing food and staying calm, waiting on a rescue that had already stopped listening. When the truth finally landed, that no one was coming to save them, it hit like a second wave. They had almost nothing left to eat, and their water tank, cracked silently by the impact, had been draining into the ocean since day 1. This is the part of the story most people skip over. Don't. By day 30, they were down to a few shared mouthfuls and Slavage soda per day. And dehydration doesn't just make you thirsty, it dissolves the part of your brain that keeps you reasonable. Arguments erupted over half a biscuit, over who sat closest to the daylight hole, over a sip of water someone may or may not have taken slightly too large. And then, somewhere around day 40, 3 of the 4 men started doing the math. 4 mouths, 4 shares of water, 4 bodies taking up space on a 4-foot mattress. What if there were only 3? They talked about it. Not as a hypothetical, but as a plan. They didn't do it though. Whether it was morality or exhaustion or something they couldn't name, they pulled back. But the fact that 3 rational men seriously considered murder isn't just a sign that they were monsters. It's a sign of what 40 days without water actually cost you. On day 40 it rained. John had rigged a catchment system from Slavage piping weeks earlier, just in case. Every container overflowed. Phil would later say that first mouthful of clean water was better than any meal of his life. The argument stopped. 4 broken men sat in the dark, drank, and said nothing. Sometimes survival is exactly that simple. Weeks passed, and something strange was happening to the outside of the hull. Barnacles, algae, mollusks. The wreck had become a floating reef. And where there's reef, there are fish. big ones, kingfish circling the boat daily. The men improvised spears. They'd climb out through the access hall, balance on the slick curved hull in open ocean swells. Nothing to grab, nothing beneath them but deep water and hunt. It was dangerous. It was also the first time in months they felt like they were actually doing something. John kept a logbook throughout. Early on, detailed entries, weather, supplies, drift estimates, a captain's instincts trying to stay useful. By month 3, entries were a few words. By month 4, a few letters. Day 116. John's full entry for the day. Is this enough? Can I go home now? He was asking the universe. He'd been on that matrix for 116 days, and he needed to know if he had earned the right to leave. The answer was 2 days away. The boat was caught in the roaring 40s, a belt of ocean famous for violent westerly winds. Every current model, every expert, every law of maritime physics said the wreck should have ended up off the coast of South America. Instead, it went home. Over 4 months, completely invisible to the men inside, the wind shifted. The Rose Noel drifted west, retracting nearly 1,900 miles of ocean, straight back towards New Zealand. Oceanographers later called the pattern extraordinarily rare. The convergence of seasonal anomalies that shouldn't have aligned. September 13, 1989, day 118. John crawled out into the gray morning light and stopped. Land, cliffs, Great Barrier Island, 56 miles from Auckland. He couldn't speak. Then he shouted below deck, and for the first time in 4 months, all 4 men sat on top of the hull in the open air and looked at land. 9-foot swells threw the wreck onto the rocks. The boat that had protected them for 118 days was shredded in minutes. They threw themselves into the white water, dragged themselves onto a beach, and landed in a tiny cove, one of the only sections of shoreline without sheer cliffs. 50 yards to either side, and they'd have been crushed. 1,900 miles, and they landed in the one safe spot. They found an empty holiday house nearby. They broke in, they showered for the first time in 4 months, put on clean clothes, slept in real beds, and the next morning, John picked up the phone and called the police. This is where it should end. Instead, the world called them liars. Maritime experts said the drift was physically impossible. Authorities had intercepted radio signals from the Rose Noel's call sign after the flip 500 miles in the wrong direction. The men looked too healthy for 4 months at sea, and soon the darkest theory emerged. They were drug smugglers. The whole survival story was a cover for a botched Pacific drug run, where 4 men who had just lived through the actual bell being interrogated as criminals was its own kind of breaking point. But the boat saved them again. Investigators examined the hull and found months of layered biological growth. Barnacles in stages of development that marine biologists confirmed definitively could only have formed over the exact time that men claimed. The radio signals were most likely misidentified call signs from a different vessel. The health questions dissolved under scrutiny. You cannot fake 4 months of barnacles. Every accusation was dropped, and the story was confirmed. The crew of Rose Noel was exonerated completely. Here's what the statistics don't tell you. Fell went home to his wife and 4 kids, the faces that had kept him functional for 118 days. The part of the story ended right, but the bond those 4 men formed in the dark, it didn't survive the light. Rick and Jim said publicly they never wanted to see John again. John also felt the same. The trauma hadn't connected them, it had consumed them, and looking at each other's face was like looking at the wreck. 4 men walked away from each other forever. The Rose Noel drifted 1,900 miles, survived 118 days upside down. Come back against the current, against the wind, against everything that said it shouldn't. Whether you call it luck or physics or something else entirely, they came home. Thank you for watching. If this one got you, the like button is right there. See you in the next one.